Welcome to the Do It All Dad Year podcast. Dad-friendly entertainment for you and me. Controlling our kids through comedy can make our kids great again. And I am your host, Michael Kornbluth, and this is episode 21 of the Do It All Dad Year podcast. King of all stay-at-home dads. Once again, I would like to congratulate Bon Jovi for finally getting inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Woo! It's about time, folks. Howard Stern, the king of all media, introduced Bon Jovi. When I learned of this announcement, I thought to myself, but how hilarious can Howard Stern be as a bazillionaire banging bet these days? Turns out plenty. A highlight of his speech was when Howard, being the king of all media, understanding that, it's great to talk a big game, but in the end, it's all about ratings and numbers and selling units and adoring fans that will pay money to see you live and stay up late to watch your Channel 9 special, especially to see those good old-fashioned Snapple models. They certainly weren't tuning in just for Richard Simmons' sketches alone, although he was great in all of them. So the highlight of, for those that haven't seen it yet, HBO Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I've always loved these documentaries. They're more like special tributes. The bands are always in their tip-top shape. I love the speeches. I think rock and roll musicians are very articulate and poetic, and they give A-plus speeches. And what I love about the speeches at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is, they always thank, the people that encouraged their art, or whether it be like a manager or an agent or a program director at a radio station. They always pay tribute to the ones that gave their dreams flight, and that flight for their dreams is based on faith and love. And I think it's really great when these musicians are able to achieve the mountaintop, such as Bon Jovi, and you hear Howard reference these stories about them, sleeping on the floor in some, shitbox in Philly, with it being 12 degrees inside and out. And I just love these stories. I'm jealous, to be honest with you. You hear these Ryan Reynolds sleeping in his car and all this stuff. I mean, it's nothing new, but I mean, it's really a testament to, if you really want something to happen in this life, like the great John Bon Jovi has sang before, you gotta make your own breaks. And I think it's just anyone that gets into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because all those guys at some point have been the recipient of that same attack, which is get a real job. George Thorogood does a great song where that's in the chorus. I'm drawing a blank on the title of it, and I can relate to that. So I just want to say congratulations, Bon Jovi. I got my TV writing break 4 years ago, and the highlight of writing that entire countdown special, where I wrote all these intros for all these great heavy metal videos, the highlight for me was being able to write that slightly long-winded intro where I refer to you guys as the luscious long-haired cowboys from New Jersey, delivering the ultimate 1-2 punch that knocked the metal world off its feet. And Chris Jericho, the host, got very giddy. He even ripped off his leather jacket when he was giving the intro in your honor. And I took my daughter to see your band at Mohegan Sun, and it was a real special moment. that I'll always cherish forever. So you guys will always be Hall of Fame musicians in my heart forever. As far as I'm concerned, the best things to come out of New Jersey are Kevin Smith, Bon Jovi, and of course Bruce. And Bruce is one of those instances. Well, and I'm also going to include Anthony Bourdain. So Anthony Bourdain, Bon Jovi, Kevin Smith, all those guys. All of them could hate Donald Trump. They could wish that he fails. Ultimately, I would like to think that they're not thinking that. But even if they do, those guys, I give a pass. Every guy that's mentioned, Bourdain, Bon Jovi, Bruce Springsteen, Kevin Smith. Make me proud to be a New Yorker. You're from New Jersey. It's the same thing, except you got a bigger edge in your shoulder. And that is contribute to your success. So, God bless you all. Obviously, Chelsea Handler isn't included in that conversation. So yesterday, there was a biker rally in D.C., and I was thinking to myself, I really wish Hunter S Thompson, was alive yesterday to report on the bike rally in D.C. That was protesting Robert Mueller's kill Trump's presidency revenge fantasy. Hunter would totally side with Trump. Johnny Depp would die of a broken heart. So this is a father-son talk I had yesterday with my 4-year-old son Arthur. You're not allowed to glare aggressively at your wife anymore, especially if they're used to catatonic-induced victimized whispering on NPR. Yesterday was the Kentucky Derby. Eating dirt at the Kentucky Derby means somebody blurted out Seth Rich one too many times after too many mint juleps around Hillary Hammertime Cankles and the press box suites. My daughter's friend in the first grade asked, "Do you celebrate Cinco de Mayo?" And my daughter says, "I eat corn on the cob with mayo and cilantro on it if my dad pushes the issue." Growing up, my mom said, "Son," my mom's from Kentucky. Growing up, my mom's Jefferson to be exact. Phenomenal bourbon whiskey for any of you doodle dads out there that could actually control your intake. I can't, hence me not having bourbon in my household anymore. But my children encourage me to drink it on my birthday and on New Year's, which I think is really sweet. Reminds me of an old joke. So what's it like being a stay-at-home dad? Drinking alone is no longer an issue. I have to stop laughing at my old jokes. So, my mom, growing up, I digress. She said, growing up, my mom would say, "Son, Kentucky is known for 2 things, horses and pretty women." I said, "Keep your sundress on, Mom, before you reveal Dad is hung like Seabiscuit." Great book about the famous racehorse Seabiscuit. I strongly recommend it. What's very comical about that book is that you find out that most horses sleep erect, the way we sleep sleeping down. We're talking like 8 hours a night, and they sleep erect. But Seabiscuit slept passed out on the ground like a drunk, Chris Farley on a 72-hour binge, with Heidi Fleiss's, C+ call girls because he couldn't secure any A+ ones towards his final run on this earth. God bless Chris Farley. I love Chris Farley. I wasn't trying to make that a dig at Chris Farley. It just depresses the hell out of me towards the end. You couldn't even, I remember reading, high-end call goals were, turning him down, and just, it's very upsetting. In an SNL book, Jay Moore refers to Chris Marley. I'm sorry. I'm an idiot. Jay Moore. I've always loved. He was so funny in Action, which was a Hollywood parody. He played a big-time producer back in the day. Buddy Hackett had a role of a limo driver. Pretty limited role for Buddy. He was very disappointed. They completely circumcised his personality and all sorts of funny. But Jay Moore was really funny in it. And so I just remember reading, and he's one of those guys like David Cross that dropped out of high school and ended up becoming a big deal, in comedy. So God bless him. But so anyway, in this book on SNL, where they interview all these former cast members, Jay Moore was a cast member just for a little bit, during that one down year with Anthony Michael Hall and Gilbert Gottfried and Julia Louis-Dreyfus. But anyway, he describes in that book, from what I read, I remember he describes Chris Farley as the Michael Jordan of comedy, which I thought was always very special. So God bless you, big fella. I also remember hearing an interview on Stern with Schneider and Sandler, which is pretty awesome because Sandler has never been on, prior, and they talked about how Farley's father was a really big guy, and that he was made fun of, and that always stayed with them. And Farley, he went to rehab a gazillion times. Belushi was his idol, but he really made an effort to make clean. But he was great in everything he did. Although I will admit I've never seen the entirety of No, Beverly Hills Ninja was very funny. He was looking very portly then. Tommy Boy's great. Black Sheep's great. And his cameo in Dirty Work was classic. So it's a shame. And literally right there, I mentioned more movies than he was in than Belushi was, really. I mean, Belushi, Neighbors sucked. 1940 or 1942 with Belushi, with that Spielberg movie, whatever. Animal House, obviously, best comedy of all time. But, again, limited screen time. And Blues Brothers. So. Moving forward. So, Michelle Obama can't shut up at all. So, she gave some speech in LA recently, and she said, Michelle Obama says, she insists her husband Barack didn't end racism. I agree. He broke the Richter scale of race war perpetuation in 8 years flat. Black Lives Matter is the Spurn kid from The Incredibles who takes his best Public Enemy impersonation too far. I love that analogy. It's fresh off the press. Aren't you guys blessed? Michelle Obama says racism still persists in America. And my husband is hell-bent on doing everything in his power to perpetuate the crater of reverse racism he spearheaded times infinity evermore. Obama is scheduled to do McCain's eventual eulogy. Who's really getting pre-leakage from that seminal announcement? Obama is scheduled to do McCain's eulogy. Ben Rhodes is watching Rambo for research as we speak. Obama is scheduled to do McCain's eulogy. Because the Reverend Al Green is too conservative Christian for McCain's taste. McCain told Biden to not walk away from politics, despite his insistence on being a dope. John McCain doesn't want Trump to attend his funeral. Can funeral bans start trending on Twitter immediately? For those who think defriending doesn't send the message across powerfully enough? This is Michelle Obama defending Hillary. If only Barack had her qualifications. This is John Kerry trying to save the Iran deal. Ayatollah, if I could put a burka over my wife, I would. You can't put Heinz ketchup money on a pig and want to kiss his lipstick. So I'm watching the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ceremony, which I mentioned before. I watched part of it last night, the rest this morning with my kids, because they love Bon Jovi. And I wanted to expose my children to the speeches, because the speeches are great. I mean, they encapsulate a lifetime of passion and struggle and celebration. It's like the perfect movie arc. Anyway, being celebrated by your peers, what more can you ask for? So, Lauryn Hill, because Nina Simone had got inducted to Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Great documentary on Netflix till I realized that she used to beat up on her daughter, and then it lost its momentumness for me. But I mean, obviously, very talented. But being a father of three, I can't get behind that at all. Sorry. I know all these Christian conservatives that I follow on my Twitter feed. They like to cite the Bible and the rod, the good old rod. Must use the rod. Must use the rod to institute discipline. And in retrospect, my father gave my brother a beating as if he was the Ray Liotta character in Goodfellas. Would that have made him, less of a selfish, drug-fueled prima donna that took everything for granted? Perhaps. But, when you're a parent, it's your call. You're the king. You're the ruler by inherent, connection alone. And I use the good old smack on the tuchus a couple of times in the past, but I mean it didn't involve a lengthy wind up ever. But I do like to bust my wife's balls when I talk about the one time when Matilda, my eldest born, she was nibbling on Mama's nipples, but she proceeded to bite on them after my wife had given her plenty of fair warning, and then out of nowhere I could have counted 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, whack! And I said, babe, that was some wind-up. That was at least 4 Mississippi. And she goes, shut up. So I still bring that up to this day. I think it's funny. But it didn't work. However, the last time I gave my son Arthur, when I had him going to pre-K, he was just taking forever to get ready. It was the winter. I had like 3 kids. It was just a lot. And I gave him a slightly aggressive love tap on the tuchus, and he was infuriated with me. All of a sudden thinking, like, my son's going to not love me ever again. Our relationship is going to be completely disintegrated. All my hard work is going to, be rendered to, nothing. Complete buckus. And then in the car, I started making fun of myself. No, this is what I said. I said, Arthur, I got a deal. Because I don't want you to, I don't want you to hate me forever. So I said, how about the next time you misbehave? Daddy starts slapping his own bum from behind. And then while I was driving, I bent over and I'm literally slapping myself in the behind. And he started smiling. And I was thinking that would be a really great image for my eventual book that I write. That could be a combination of fiction, could be a distillation of some words of wisdom from this podcast. But basically it's called Controlling Your Kids Through Comedy. And it'd be a picture of myself, bent over, slapping my bum, while my son points at me, laughing hysterically. And last night, I'm hanging out with my children. We're watching the Incredibles. My son's giving me these golden monkey bear hugs from behind, and the kid could not be more loving. So he definitely made me feel like a king in my own palace, hence the name King of All Stay-at-Home Dads. I was not drinking beer last night, trying to show my kids that I possess some self-discipline, and trying to lose some weight. And I'm still, slightly slender for a guy my size. I don't know, I think I'm around 210, 208. I think I'm being generous by calling myself 208. But I'm also 6'4". But the point is, I want to get down to 200 so I could dunk with as much freedom. And I don't want to really feel the beer-bloated heavy weightiness to pull me down. And that's a goal, and I want to make that happen, for my children. So, I'm talking about beer. I'm listening to Beastie Boys. My newborn, Samuel, is going nuts on Beastie Boys, which made this Jewish New Yorker very proud. He had his belly down, looked like he was body surfing, and his body started pulsating to Intergalactic and Sabotage, and his head started shaking, and it looked like he was being electrocuted. His body was convulsing. He looked like he was possessed, like James Brown and the Blues Brothers. Beautiful thing. I wish my father had some stories like that. I guess he just didn't expose me to music at an early age. I understand he also didn't have all these, great electronic devices. He didn't have all these amazing, Bose, Harman, Carmen, portable, speakers, Spotify, Pandora. He didn't have all that. So it's a little bit easier for me, but it's a great thing. I have distinct memories of my daughter doing her first soul-inspired shimmy to Bob Marley, Doopy Conqueror. It was all about a song about conquering, overcoming the evil spirits. I thought that was really cool. And she did a decent semi-substantial head bob to Made You Look by Nas when we were living in Queens prior. So you always remember these things, which is a beautiful thing. So my daughter was saying last night, she says, Daddy, so I made this quote. I think I was quoting Hunter S Thompson because I was thinking about the Derby and of what I shared with you before about the biker rally in D.C., the protest, the witch hunt, the Robert Mueller witch hunt. And I said the quote, which was, good people drink good beer. And my daughter says, well, Daddy, do you drink great beer? Because you're great. And she makes me feel great. So it's very easy to feel like the king of all stay-at-home dads when I continue to get such loving, gushing, rave reviews. So back to watching the HBO Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So Lauryn Hill's performing on HBO. And I love my daughter so much. This is her exact response. Her outfit is awful. I would never wear a dress like that in a million years. So I love the fact that like my daughter, who's only 7, that's had no exposure to Lauryn Hill, is not aware of her backstory, about her going nuts a little bit, being arrested for tax evasion, blah blah blah, and her involvement recording the education, the miseducation of Lauryn Hill, her being married to Marley, all that stuff. But it's definitely been assumed for some time that she's gone off the reservation a little bit. Some people call her crazy. I don't like to use that word. So I just thought that was hilarious. That she just looked at this outfit. She's like, okay, this is ridiculous. And it was a very self-indulgent rendition of whatever Nina Simone song she was singing. It took forever. I'm like, okay, I loved you for a little bit, but let's wrap it up more. You're no longer the queen bee in town. I was clamoring for Lady Gaga, for Christ's sake. I like Lady Gaga. I don't even try to diminish her, but you get my point. So, millennial media, that was trending on Twitter yesterday. Millennial media sounds as riveting as social selling on LinkedIn. I love Cortana because she hears me loud and clear. Unlike my wife, who struggles to get the weather forecast from her, and my wife thinks I've got a listening problem. Wrong. She just doesn't speak loud enough. Right, Cortana? No comment. Cortana doesn't sound like a loud, annoying Jew, in case you're wondering. I don't want to dissuade you. That's so funny. That was just Cortana responding in the room next to me. She actually heard my conversation with my audience through this podcast. That's too much. So, I've been watching some of the playoffs. The extra in the NBA, the extra clean pipes on Jazz fans from being in shape from banging so much is a wonder to behold. So, I mentioned beforehand about my mom being from Kentucky. But my wife loves to point out the fact that Kentucky is not the actual South. She likes to refer to it as more Midwest South than Deep South. Where finger food is considered anything which tastes like your cousin's panties. So I had called my wife's hospital. She works as a nurse. She works in the NICU and labor and delivery. So she checks vital signs on blue face babies out of the womb, which makes me feel like a self-absorbed narcissist because all I check for is for retweets. I really hope that didn't sound as butchered as I thought it did. So I call her hospital. I forgot my reason why. But this nurse picks up and she says, so you're the husband who never calls. And I'm thinking to myself, all of a sudden, I feel like less of a pussy compared to firemen and cops then. Thank you. So you're the husband who never calls. My mom has raised my tolerance for guilt shaming, babe, but thanks for trying. So you're the husband who never calls. My so-called hostile tone was in the middle of defuming. Obviously, you're not helping one bit. So you're the husband who never calls. My wife forsaking head till Halley's Comet shoots a money shot across the sky. Blows also, babe. So you're the husband who never calls. What's the urgency? I haven't forgotten my kids' names yet. So you're the husband who never calls. A little busy, looking after 3 kids, trying to make the universe laugh on Twitter. No offense. So you're the husband who never calls. But when my wife isn't around, I'm side free. So DJ Khalid, I couldn't mention one song that he's produced or DJ. I don't even know if he raps, okay? It's always like a big deal. And he had an interview. I think it was like a couple of years ago. I don't know how it just like resurfaced now, but basically in the interview he says that he does not give his wife head or any girls, really. I think he was just talking about his wife actually, but DJ does not give head. DJ Khalid. So I'm reading this thinking, Dennis Rodman doesn't bury his face in blown up pastrami snatch either. If you don't believe me, read the chapter in his book about refusing to go down on Madonna before she still inhaled his dune worm hole and tell me otherwise. DJ Khalid makes the lion's share of money, I'm assuming, in his relationship. So he's earned the right to turn his nose up at the obligatory tradition of muff diving into the fishy waters of his wife's clam trap. This is a conversation I had with my wife last night. Hey, babe. It was 2 nights ago. Hey, babe, how about a blowjob tonight? She says, I'm tired. And I say, you'd perk up if I told you Obama ordered you to leak it. Wife says, or if you were DJ Khalid and bought me my black Range Rover already. Definitely deserve that one. Touche times infinity. Matt Harvey's career with the Mets is over. WFAN should be full of poetic infused laments in his honor from Bill in Hicksville, Long Island in no time. Nurse. So you're the husband who never calls. Mrs. Me. I'm having too much fun away from my wife with the remotes and my 3 kids, babe. Plus, it's not my fault your boring kids are inferior company than most. Donald Trump's day so far. Better than mine for enduring Michael Savage trying to wax poetic about being a novelist I should give 2 shits about because he thinks quoting Dharma Bums by Jack Kerouac gives him increased prestige among millennial Mouseketeers. And back to DJ Khalid, the more pressing question, ladies, is do any of you actually clamor for DJ Khalid's tongue-spinning services in the first place just because he's in a Ciroc commercial with Puff Daddy? His sex appeal is raised past the Turkish prison guard and Midnight Express? So you're the husband who never calls. I have my Twitter fans to keep my comedic spirits afloat. The Knicks have a new head coach. You can tell by the tone of my voice. Not too enthralled about it. Dada, why did the Knicks hire David Fizdale? Because hiring a proud Zionist like David Blatt is considered a racist hire these days and no longer kosher. Matilda, did you know the Girl Scouts offer badges for coding now? Daughter says, but only ugly girls go to coding boot camp. Dada, why did the Knicks hire David Fizdale? Because he isn't afraid to bench European white franchise players and hurt their feelings. Dada, I don't get it. Why did the Knicks hire David Fizdale? Because he's the one coach at Miami who LeBron respected enough to not shoulder bump in the opposite direction. Dada, why did the Knicks hire David Fizdale? Because he circle jerks with Michael Rappaport to his Louis episode and Antifa sizzle reels on YouTube. Ad nauseum. Dada, why did the Knicks hire David Fizdale? Because James Dolan is the real racist for ever, for never, ever considering inviting Ewing in for an interview. Head coach interview. Dada, why did the Knicks hire David Fizdale? Because Stephen A. Smith won't crucify him for being another bland coach who's whiter than his George McFly haircut and old school pair of short shorts. Data, why did the Knicks hire David Fizdale? James Dolan's only use for ex-Knicks is for eye candy, escorts, to sit next to his lordship for MSG home games. If you could afford your own tailored suits, you get a GM role like Allen Houston. And that data, why did the Knicks hire David Fizdale? I still don't get it. They hired him because he's down with Black Lives Matter, taking down Civil War statues, and dated Miss Latvia in college. You can't withdraw from the Iran deal. I love hearing that. You can't withdraw from the Iran deal. But John Kerry wore his finest power pink forward signing. Vineyard Vines already framed his tie at the local Rotary Club, for Christ's sake. So give it a rest. Did you know that Chinese train conductors, they're now forced to wear brain wave reading helmets? It detects spikes in depression, like when the train conductor learns on Ancestry.com his second cousin is Yao Ming. So I want to thank Howard Stern, the king of all media. Howard, I read your books in like 2 seconds flat. I remember reading your second one, obviously not as good as the first. And I'm in Cape Cod. It's before I met Katie, my summer wind. And I was completely directionless. I consider myself a complete failure. I had some friends my first 2 years of college, and I lost my virginity, but not really. I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, literally, this actually happened. You bet your ass I'm having a sex talk with my children sooner than later. Because I had the opportunity where I'm about to lose my virginity, and I was literally sandwiched against a futon by two chesty Italian sisters. One was a musician, actually. And then later that night, I'm in my dorm room. She didn't even go to school there, which was like super hot. And I mean, she could be like 22, so she was 23, much older than me at the time. I was only 19. And she goes, and I was like in the process of going down on her. And she goes, I'm on my period, and I didn't even know what that meant. I hate to admit it, but it's true. It really is. It's not really a subject of conversation. It's really brought up in either A, health class, or B, when you're watching endless repeats of Scandal in the Mansion. So, but why am I bringing that up? I'm bringing this up, Howard, because I did have a radio show in college at Lake Forest College on the North Shore. It was half-ass, and that's being generous. But I did take some creative chances. I remember one time I was talking about the Gamma Rho sorority, and there was like whipped cream, and got a little sexualized with my conversation. And I remember this one guy that's hanging out with Pete, who's a boarding school kid. Nice guy. And, yeah, major stoner. But yeah, he was smart. And I remember him giving me encouragement. It's like, I like what you did today in the radio show. And it felt really special that I had, like, friends, back then that I just met that listened to the show and that were encouraging. Yeah, that meant a lot. So thanks, Pete. Thanks, Kowal, my old roommate, my Hawaiian partner in crime, who attended Barack Obama's private school called Punahou. Michael was a good basketball player. We had some nice wars together, actually, in college. And we played an intramural team with the Malfius and Lou. They were basically the cool, badass stoners at Lake Forest. But Malfius, he played rugby, so he was a total badass. And there was Frank, he was a drummer. Had the build like he could play football. Pretty sure he didn't hit in high school. And then Lou, who basically looked like a better-looking version of Carlos Santana, with the corduroys, had the cool ponytail. He inspired me. Completely scared the shit out of me one night in college when he was driving on the campus in his Jeep. I sounded like such a bitch. He was so drunk. I had zero faith in like us surviving that night. But anyway, the point being is, I had a radio show in college, Howard, And I certainly wasn't listening to Michael Savage back then, and obviously right now my talent for him turned out to be pretty low. You were everything. I remember this girl, Dina Kleiman, saying Howard would love you. And so having that radio show and reading your book, and it really being my inspiration to pursue a degree in communications, not really knowing what direction I wanted to take with it, just knowing that I liked the radio show, I liked being expressive. I didn't really have any confidence in like my comedy chops back then, but you always spoke to me, and you're always great. Your Childline show was awesome. But I do have special bonding moments with my dad. I got to give props where props are due. Was watching that Channel 9 show with my father, and of course drinking Snapple, in your honor. And those are very special memories, and I'm really glad, my dad exposed myself to you, and you're a true New Yorker, and I love everything you've done for comedy. I've always said that, I love your story, and I love your position of power in the sense that I've always thought that, Howard, you could bust anyone's balls and get away with it. To the point where, all these guys that do stand up and, they're professional killers, but, you could just throw off one caustic aside, such as like when Dennis Miller was on your show and you said, well, Dennis, when you were hosting Monday Night Football, I felt that the majority of your material was really like going over the heads of the majority of most Americans and blah, blah, blah. And he got all tense. And you would get Richard Lewis so tense and like frenetic. And I love that because you were responsible for filling up dead time forever. And me just doing a podcast right now, more than ever, has a high appreciation for that ability to be so entertaining and so engaging and so interesting for so long. And to wake up at the crack of dawn forever. And I think it was so great at your speech when you inducted Bon Jovi, talking about how you really appreciated the special role you have as far as being able to celebrate, great, rock and roll artists within your forum, hosting on a radio show. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And as you know, I did compete for, or maybe you don't, but I did compete for a writing job on your show. And that was a real thrill. Just to be in hitting distance of the king, I gotta tell you. And it's a cool thing to tell people as well. Obviously, Donald Trump will call me a loser at this point for even bringing it up. But it was great to compete, and I love putting together that portfolio for you guys. And then, to have the Reverend Bob Levy watch one of my recruitment videos I did with my daughter, my creative tech staffing firm, stand-up staffer, 2 summers ago, and have him throw some compliments my way on me being very relaxed and how I've got it. That felt wonderful. So thank you, Rev Bob Levy. I love you. I love you, Howard Stern. I love Bon Jovi. Obviously, I've got a connection to all of you and in my life, and you inspire me to keep the faith and to make my own breaks. So I love you all, and I want to give a special shout out to my daughter, Matilda, who inspired this episode, king of all stay-at-home dads, because you look at me with such adoring, worshipful eyes, and I don't want to be worshipped. I just, whenever you're able to get, love reciprocated, it's a beautiful thing. But my daughter's eyes just dance and come to life whenever they lock with mine. She gets a little carried away with the scruffing of my beard, which I bust her balls about, which is really cute. And I can't get enough of you, kid. So I love you times infinity. It's good to be the king, even if it is here on the Stay-at-Home Dad front. The best is yet to come. I know that I'll always be the king of the Stay-at-Home Dads in your heart, regardless of what future career opportunities materialize down the road. Arthur, Matilda, Samuel, thank you for making Dad feel like such special, noble, king of all dads royalty. Love you forever. This is Stay-at-Home Dad, king of Croton Falls. Do It All Dad, your podcast. Dad-friendly entertainment for you and me. Controlling our kids through comedy can make our kids great again. Talk to you soon.